They say similar things about Lee Harvey Oswald. Like, Lee Harvey Oswald, one of those dudes that, like, he, like, was a Marine, and then he didn't like this shit. Then he moved to Russia for a while, and brought home a Russian wife, and was still taking pictures with guns, and, yeah, it was his stories.
And then he shot the president, allegedly.
Allegedly. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Martial Mind Podcast. On today's episode, we have a lot of great topics for you. Stick around. Let's get it started.
Yeah, I really wanted to use that first take because me and John just, like, unbeknownst to each other, did synchronized double thumbs up. We just both Fonzied it. Just like
you guys aren't allowed to do that and not have kids. You know? You can't not be dads.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought you meant together. All right.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a very specific and intense rule for thumbs up, but that's okay.
You just can't coach that level of chemistry. You really can't.
You guys aren't in a loving marriage. You can't do that. It's like, okay, that seems like a lot, but that's okay. That's fine.
These guys are in sync. They must be fucking.
That's how it goes.
I mean,
that's how it goes. You really can, like, read each other's energies. You know what I mean?
No, we're just so in tune. But anyway.
Nope. I think not. I
think so. Just little water bottles.
Just directly in your eye.
It works on cats and some dogs, but not Ed.
Yeah.
Ed is far too feral to be persuaded with a spritz bottle.
No amount of small sprays of water can stop me.
Look at the size of them.
Oh my God.
You need a bucket or a hammer. A hammer would work way better.
Yeah, you gotta use like
small spritz of water.
You gotta use like white vinegar instead of water, and it has to be coming out of like a 9mm or something. Just come out of like an M9. just military grade.
Yeah, one of those like those water guns that like can soak up like a 10-gallon bucket of water. And just fires bullets of water at your
Immediate
friends.
way for a pool party to end in tears when somebody brings out the pain tube. It's going down as soon as
what is
somebody...
that? This is a rail gun. Immediately blinds a 5-year-old.
I would waste if I had money to waste. I would waste it on one of those fucking water guns. Absolutely, it sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like a good purchase for us at some point is just a lot of Nerf guns.
Just toys.
Yeah, just toys.
We'll just turn into one of those YouTube channels that's like, let's see how long it takes them to break the emerald out of the giant block of cement.
Let's never do that. Let's never do that.
You know
ever.
what I'm talking about, though.
I know. I hate those.
And as an adult, I hate how much time I've wasted just being like, how long is it going to take?
I just want to.
Is there an emerald?
I just want to get those like bolt action single shot like anti like equipment personnel Nerf snipers.
Anti-ginger
equipment.
Yeah.
That like where it's like they could like legitimately bruise like a bison. Like they could just bruise like it would just go like if you hit it like it would know that you shot it with something and it would hurt. like it would move a little bit like
trot away from whatever
yeah.
patch
It'd be
of
like
grass
fuck
that
that. Yeah, those things are. The bullets are like this. The bullets are like if you like carve the cylinder out of like a 6-inch like Subway sandwich. Like it's just like it's like this.
Those things can do damage. Like remember the riots when people were getting shot in the face with rubber bullets and they were getting seriously
Yeah, but those
damaged?
aren't like Nerf gun bullets. Those are like they're made to cause pain. They're called less lethal because like they're not non-lethal. You can literally kill someone with a rubber bullet. You can from close enough range.
I was reading an article on Quora today about how I posted it on my Facebook. About the AR-15.
Yeah.
And it was super interesting because it was like, everybody talks about AR-15s as being like these super hyper deadly weapons. And it was actually really interesting because it said that the AR-15 is specifically designed to be less deadly and it's totally diabolical. It's less deadly because it costs the enemy government more money to have a wounded soldier than a dead one.
Well,
so it's more taxing on their infrastructure to wound their soldiers rather than kill them. So it's a purposefully smaller, less deadly caliber.
I think that may be an unintended consequence of focusing on maneuverability or handling of the firearm because, like, they're designed so that you could put that firearm in anyone's hands and they can operate it proficiently. I've seen people shoot them off the tip of their nose without breaking it. It's that soft.
There's no recoil. Yeah.
It's
That's
really
crazy.
Meanwhile, like a 50 caliber like sniper rifles and stuff like that. There's like I forget what the term is, but there's a club of people that like get black eyes from the scope.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I feel like if you were even to like do the nose thing with like an AK, you would just like turn into like Lord Voldemort. Like it would just be like, just your nose would be all over your face.
Yeah, that's AKs are serious firepower. But
did you see the guy who
How about we bent over to get this on my back pop? Your 30s are great.
Well, welcome to your 30s.
That is fluid and well oiled. He's just he just moves 6 inches this way and then just dies.
Yeah.
Well, But there was
just herniated something.
There was a guy on it's one of like the popular like gun channel guys who like will test fire a bunch of stuff, and he had one that was like a single, like where you like where you manually put, like you open the chamber, or you open like the barrel and you put the 50 cal round in the barrel and you close it and then you screw it shut. It was like a single, like, yeah.
You have to seal it.
Yeah, it's like, you just wait right there. Hold on. Don't you fucking move. Hold on one sec. You know, and literally, I don't know if the
It's for deer hunting.
if the deer
Blow the entire ribcage out of the deer.
if the deer's like in like an APC, the deer's just in like a military police vehicle.
The deer's hiding behind a group of refrigerators.
I'm just picturing the deer like
the deer's hiding behind like a
it's
long
keep
table
the
with
windows open for the antlers.
yeah.
Somebody abducted the deer with a submarine. So
Yeah.
the deer
That deer's hiding behind a big table that has 45 textbooks in front of it. Hold on a sec.
one of them textbook deer.
one of them reading deers.
Gotta hit him with the big boy. All right, give me about 38 seconds. All right.
But I
Is that Nietzsche? This deer's smart.
clearly the and sad probably.
Yeah,
So,
probably. The deer actually, I don't think if the deer read enough Nietzsche, I don't think it would like keep up with its military defense.
just
It would
have a
just give
huge
up.
mustache.
It would just give up. It'd be like, there's no point.
it would just have John's mustache just on.
Yeah,
Nietzsche had a ginormous mustache.
yeah.
So John's not a stereotypical white man. He is actually just sad. So yeah.
Hence the
And a philosopher.
Hence
that
the
was, that was the first joke I thought of, and then it just went. It's like I was like in the middle of saying the joke, and it was like, "Oh, all your comedy juice is gone." Yeah,
And I drink
That's
your milkshake.
That's why he's so funny, because he just drains it out.
I just hocus pocus breathe.
I wasn't tired until Ryan got here.
And now we're just exhausted to see him.
But the guy, he was firing one of those guns, and it literally it malfunctioned and blew up, and literally
God.
he got like, I think it was a piece of the barrel in his jugular, and
Oh,
it literally
shit.
like blew back and sliced his neck open, and literally like the next like 12 minutes were like his dad was there, and he's like all right, time to go, and he just like his dad just like stuck his thumb in his throat and was just like, all right, time to go to the hospital, and he like survived.
Wow.
But that's like
Well, it's like
That's horrifying.
So we had a really awesome double dagger workshop.
so funny. I was just gonna start talking about that.
Oh, yeah.
We had a really awesome. We
gotta talk about
really
them
awesome
double
double
dags.
dagger workshop with Sigo and Greg Zilb, our illustrious instructor. And I have to say one thing about knife work.
It's like just
Fucking hate you.
excuse me. I have my 12-inch foot-long sub sandwich of a water bottle.
Just Ryan drinking out of
This
his
is
water
tuna.
tank.
Like what?
Like, why'd you have to drink it towards me?
I don't know.
Would you guys like some tapioca pudding?
Yes, Ed's in the middle of a point. Let me not distract him.
My water's just filled with Jello. Just
So you gotta
like-
chew it. You gotta
You're
chew
like at
it.
the end of like a Go-Gurt. Like,
Oh, it's still frozen.
oh my god. So
Derailed.
anyway, God, now that everyone's signed off, we have this double dagger seminar. So the Shaolin double daggers are a little bit different. They're
I have mine somewhere over here.
don't go for them. But you can relate them to a karambit that has a straight blade because it has the ring, and the ring is also used as kind of like a brass knuckle. You can spin it, but you don't really do that. There are some techniques where you can turn it, but it's more of a dexterity.
Yeah, I
thing.
was gonna say helps with dexterity.
And it's a fucking terrifying weapon. Knives are just scary as shit. And
Yeah.
he brought up a video of a knife attack where this kid doesn't even know what he's doing, and the guy's just like boop, and the
Dude.
kid takes 3 steps and is just dead. So
It
you
just
don't know
bleeds
how
out and
easy it
dies.
is. You don't know how easy it is. So it's like, from the martial arts perspective, I know we have like no funny videos to pull up or anything like that, but there really is some bullshit out there that like it's like the Jim Carrey thing, from In Living Color with the knife. Like, it's like it doesn't happen like that. So you got to be really careful what you're
knives
what you're
are-
out there for.
You've seen that specific video?
I have not seen that specific video. Have
Dude,
you?
yeah.
It's a video I don't want to watch.
I immediately knew what he was talking about because it's not just this dude encounters a knife and doesn't know what to do in response to it. He's advancing on this person who has a knife. This big dude who thinks he's tougher than a guy with a knife is continuously advancing, and the knife is plain to see. It's not hidden. So he knows what he's approaching, but he doesn't. So he comes up to the guy, tries to grab him, and it's a quick right to the neck, and the guy stumbles, and you just see the floor changes color. You don't even really see like you're not sure what's going on, and then all of a sudden he just drops, and you just watch this guy pass away. It was horrible. I'll never, that's one of those videos you just stumble across. You're like, I just
Oh
watched
my
somebody
God,
get on alive.
I've seen stuff
Yeah.
like that. Remember when Faces of Death was a thing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those. I had one of those shitty friends. I'll tell you his name later. You know exactly who I'm talking about. But I had one of those shitty friends in high school that would like sit you down and be like, "Watch this, or you're a pussy," you know, like, and just traumatize you for the rest of your life, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
If you don't remember this in your dreams forever, you're a bitch.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
go to therapy. What?
dude, literally,
Seriously,
like people, like people having their like shit chopped off
Yep.
with like a Bowie knife, just like sawing.
Oh, you're probably
Into
talking
the
about
neck.
the same video. Because one of my coworkers came up to me. It was like, "Hey, want to see something cool?" And there's just two guys tied up, and one of them just gets their head buzzed off with a chainsaw. I'm like, Jesus Christ, man! Like, you're just gonna open with that? Like, what the fuck, dude?
I'm eating my lunch.
We have a training brother who is a police officer who is
Yeah.
completely desensitized to stuff like that. Like, you don't know the stuff that they see.
Yeah.
You know? So, like, shout out to our law enforcement. Shout out to John's sister. Like,
Yeah.
New York City police officer, badass woman.
Speaking
she
speaking
could
of
beat me up.
speaking,
True.
we've tried to all take her at once and we can't.
Yeah.
She will pistol whip a bitch, dude. It's just
But the point that I'm trying to make is, like, he would literally be like, "Dude, check out this video," and be like, "Isn't that crazy?" And it's like literally like a person going splat. Like, it's,
Yeah, just
you
jumping
know.
off a building and just turning into pudding. And you're just, and he's like, isn't that crazy? And I was like, what? And he's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, right. And then he just goes back to like texting, and I'm like,
So
gotta
anyway, what do you want
recover
to eat
from
later?
that.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
it's
just
well, that also happened to what is it? One of my friends. His dad was higher up in the police department to the point
oh,
where
I know this story.
to the point where, you know, like if there was like an accident or stuff like that, he would usually show up at the scene as like the commanding officer. And I remember one time we were like down in his basement, like playing like Star Wars Battlefront, like yeah, having fun, you know. And his dad's like, "I'll be back. I gotta go something for work." And then he comes back later and he's like, "Hey guys," he's like, "Come here." and he lures us over to the basement slop sink. And
That's always a good thing to have.
And he's holding his boot. And he's flicking stuff out of the tread of his boot into the sink. He goes, "You want to know what that is?" He goes, "That's skull." And I was like, what?
Whoa.
Just immediately calling my mom, even though I drove there. I'm like, "Can you come pick me up?"
Yeah, that's.
And he was like, yeah, he's like, "That's why you don't drive a motorcycle without a helmet." He's like, guy was all over the parkway, and I was just like, this was like 2:30 in the morning.
How old
We're
were you?
like eating Pop-Tarts and like playing battle. This was. You know what's funny is you say
2006?
how old were you? No, this was
He's like 27.
Just last week.
This was like I was probably like 19, 20 maybe.
All right, you can still be eating Pop-Tarts and playing Battlefront.
I was gonna
you
say
know what I mean?
Hey,
Well,
I'm a
casual
fucking adult. I can eat
Pop-Tart, yeah.
Pop-Tarts and play Battlefront whatever the fuck I want, as long as no one sees. As long as no one sees me doing it.
Yeah.
So I don't see myself doing it. I can't do it in front of mirrors. Just start crying.
Well, now I have that image in my brain, so it is as if I've seen it, Ryan. There
you go.
Think about that.
I'm trying to be healthier and like avoid artificial sweeteners and stuff like that. Break myself out of like drinking too many C4s, even though I drank one today.
One blood clot coming right up.
And I have like a bad addiction to Coke Zero. I love Coke Zero. So I'm like, you know what? I'll buy the Whole Foods brand Coke Zero. It's probably way better for you.
No.
It's got 10 times as much crap in it, and it tastes terrible.
You should try. Have you tried Zevia before?
I have not.
Zevia's supposed to be pretty good. Zevia's it's just like stevia Coke, like stevia soda.
Stevia is like the best artificial sweetener.
Well, it's not.
I think
Stevia's
so.
not artificial. Stevia is natural sweetener.
I don't know if have you guys tried. Oh, I did show it to you guys. Poppy, it's the prebiotic soda. Yeah, Poppy. It's
Oh
very
yeah,
good.
that is definitely something I should check out.
Delicious.
What's it called again?
Poppi, Poppy. It's I tried the root beer and their Coke Imposter. I don't know what it's called, but the Dr Pepper one is called Dr Pop. That is bang on.
I've just been getting
awesome.
the like Brew Doctor cans of kombucha, and I've been having that instead of soda.
Little booch break.
Yeah, a little kombucha.
Little booch
A
break.
booch break.
So
Yeah, we're booching.
One thing we wanted to talk about now that we're pretty much caught up. So John, high five on that because we're pretty current.
Yeah. Oh. Oh, that was
That was needs a zoom. That needs a zoom.
that was just evil. That was evil.
But we're pretty current, which is nice. Like we were having issues. We wanted to talk about more like current event stuff that was happening, but we were so backlogged with the episodes as they were coming out.
We're like 10 episodes in. We're like, have you guys heard of COVID? And they're like, you're a little behind.
Yeah.
We're just locked down. We're like the Japanese
who do you think's
soldier.
gonna win the election?
Yeah, we're like
Trump or Biden.
We're like
you
the
know?
Japanese soldier on Guam. It's like, hey man, the war ended 70 years ago. He's like,
Dude, I heard a story recently. Yeah, there was a Japanese soldier on Guam. He must
Yeah.
have listened to Rogan.
yeah, when he had Forrest Galante on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that dude fucking like 40 years.
It was like 1975.
He thought
was
the war was still going.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my god.
Well, because he was in the jungle in Guam with I think with like his son or like another person, and they like, he was like, there's a
I think he had a son that he didn't and never met because he was like still in the jungle thinking the war was on.
I feel like there was a part where he was with somebody though.
We
I
should
think
look that up.
and they were
I'll look that up real quick.
and basically it was like there's
Was it Japan? Was a Japanese soldier in Guam?
in
Is that what it
Guam,
was?
and because there's still an active military base there. There's a lot of flights coming in and out. So he was like, oh, the war, war's still on, you know, and it's like,
you see military planes flying
Yeah, it's
overhead. Like,
crazy.
what else do you think is going on? You know?
Was it the one was the last Japanese soldier found on Guam? Is that
1972.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Years of service: 1941 and 45, and then in parentheses, 1972.
Just 30 years after that.
Just imaginary service was the other 30 years.
Playing pretend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like for real.
But for real. Playing
yeah.
pretend for real.
The realest
Warriors
version of
and
pretend.
post-war survival. So hold on. So
God, this sucks though.
So Soichi Yokoi, born 31st of March 1915, died in 1997, was a sergeant in the Imperial Japanese Army during the Second World War, and was one of the last 3 Japanese holdouts to be found after the end of hostiles in 1945. He was discovered in the jungles of Guam on the 24th of January 1972, almost Ryan's entire life, 28 years later after U.S. forces had regained control of the island in 1944.
That is crazy.
Initially, Yokoi served with the 29th Infantry Division in Manchukuo. In 1943, he was transferred to the 38th Regiment in the Mariana Islands and arrived on Guam in February 1943. When American forces captured the island in 1944 in the Battle of Guam, Yokoi went into hiding with 9 other Japanese soldiers. 7 of the original 10 eventually moved away, and only 3 remained in the region. These men separated, but visited each other periodically until about 1964, when the other 2 died in a flood. For the last 8 years, Yokoi lived alone. He survived by hunting, primarily at night. He also used native plants to make clothes, bedding, and storage implements, which he carefully hid in his cave. Which, we're screen recording, right? Because I'm pulling
100%.
up. Oh my God!
Time to store my leaves in my leaf drawer.
My leaf drawer made of leaves.
I'll
Made
put
a
my
fucking
leaves in
cave
here.
out of bamboo. He hid in the jungle, fearing he might be captured by American soldiers occupying the southern islands of Japan. No one told him the war was over. On the evening of the 24th of January 1972, Yokoi was discovered by 2 local men checking shrimp traps along a small river on Talafafo. I'm not saying any of this right, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, those
They
rare
had assumed
forest
Yokoi
shrimps.
was a villager from Talafafo, but he thought his life was in danger and attacked them. They managed to subdue him and carried him out of the jungle. Yokoi later said that he expected the local men to kill him at first, but was surprised when instead they allowed him to eat hot soup at their home before turning him over to the authorities. He was in relatively good health, but slightly anemic due to a lack of salt in his diet, according to doctors. His diet included wild nuts, mangoes, papaya, shrimp, snails, frogs, and rats. It was with much embarrassment that I returned, he said upon his return to Japan in March 1972. The remark quickly became a popular saying in Japan. He had known since 1952 that World War II had ended, but feared coming out of hiding, explaining we Japanese soldiers were told to prefer death to the disgrace of getting captured alive.
Oh, so this guy was actually cosplaying. Like, he knew the war was over and just decided not to come out? Is that what you're saying here, Ed?
That's, I think, what they're saying.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Feared coming out of hiding, explaining that we Japanese soldiers were told to prefer death. I'm pretty sure he must have assumed
Yeah,
that
he had known.
he must have known the war was over by 52,
Yeah.
but assumed that Japan lost, and probably assumed that any Japanese soldier would be eradicated or captured instead of like welcomed back into a Japanese society.
I mean, this is the fact that it is with much embarrassment that Ed, stop scrolling. Scroll back up. There you go. It is with much embarrassment that I return. The remark quickly became a popular saying in Japan. He became a meme. This man is a meme.
Oh my God,
That's awful.
He became a meme. That's hilarious.
Do you guys know what the definition of a meme is?
No.
anything that can be replicated. A meme is something that can be repeated. That is what a meme is.
Isn't it also carry usually like cultural significance or like cultural information?
That's simply it. Something that can be repeated. There is no other pretense.
The
to it.
cultural significance may be one of those things where like the definition kind of changes with slang, you know. But later life, after a whirlwind media tour of Japan, Yokoi married and settled down in rural Aichi Prefecture. He became a popular television personality and an advocate of simple living.
You should also make everything out of leaves.
He was featured in a 1977 documentary film called Yokoi and His 28 Years of Secret Life on Guam, which we need to watch right now. He eventually received the equivalent of $300 bucks in back pay and a small pension. Although he never met Emperor Showa, while visiting the grounds of the Imperial Palace, Yokoi said, "Your Majesties, I have returned home. I deeply regret that I could not serve you well. The world has certainly changed, but my determination to serve you will never change." Yokoi died in 1997 of a heart attack at the age of 82 and was buried at Nagoya Cemetery under a gravestone that had originally been commissioned by his mother in 1955 after Yokoi had been officially declared dead.
Wow.
This is a guy that you would definitely still have to watch, though, because, like, he'd be like, oh, he's good, but, like, he'd be like, you know, he'd still feel shame, so he'd probably, like, run a bayonet through, like, a World War II veteran. Like, it's just like a guy in a wheelchair.
They say similar things about Lee Harvey Oswald. Like, you know, Lee Harvey Oswald was one of those dudes that, like, he, like, was a Marine, and then he didn't like this shit, then he moved to Russia for a while, and brought home a Russian wife, and was still taking pictures with guns, and, yeah, it was his story is another
And then he shot the president, allegedly.
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 Allegedly. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
They just released those CIA documents. The CIA was like, yeah, we kind of knew. And we're like, what?
Dude,
What do you mean? It's like, don't worry about it.
I mean, there was one night, we three have a group chat where I went on a little FOIA wormhole and found some shit with
It's Freedom of Information Act, people.
yeah, FOIA, FOIA, Freedom of Information Act.
Not to be confused with Goya, which is the beans, but continue.
Beans! And
Or that guy that bakes and goes, fire!
well, Emerald, bam! No, but this particular art, like, it was a release of these documents, declassified documents that described consciousness and what seemed to be astral projection. And I was positively blown away. I remember you responding like, "John, what am I reading?"
Yeah,
and
you just sent it to me while I was like Ubering. And
you're just in the middle of driving, like, I can't. What is this?
Yeah.
You know. So we'll talk about that one day, and I'm sure we'll find even more stuff in the depths of the internet due to FOIA. But for now, we've got this guy.
This guy, this was a whole. I'm glad we went over this. This was pretty interesting, but this was a total ADD thing.
Yeah.
And now back to Ed to talk about eggs.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Well, that was the current event thing I was talking about, that eggs are super expensive, but it's interesting that eggs are really expensive because apparently there was an outbreak of avian flu that killed like 57 million chickens or something like that. CNN was trying to relate it back to the Ukraine war. I'm not sure.
First sentence.
I'm not sure how.
Yeah, they said the first sentence. It was like, you know, due to avian flu and also fallout from the Ukraine-Russia war. I'm like, Jesus Christ! Like, can you remove
It's
your
both.
remove your partisan lens. Not everything is Russia's fault.
According to Forbes, the avian flu has a mortality rate of 90 to 100% in chickens.
Jesus.
So a lot of chickens have died off due to this outbreak of avian flu, and it has skyrocketed the price of eggs.
This flu was just hired by like Purdue.
Yeah, at the same time, like, you're talking like a $7, $8, or $9 carton of eggs as opposed to your average like $4 or $5 carton eggs, or if you get the cheap eggs like 1 or 2. But the thing that I wanted to bring up is that according to my research lately, this is off a Google search from certifiedhumane.org, do pasture-raised eggs have better nutritional value? Right. So like, my brother and he excuse me while I die.
Now we've got the avian flu.
So anyway, so
none of this is getting edited.
No,
Yeah, we'll just keep it. Yeah.
Fuck you. He always has the last call. But yeah, so for the longest time, and I used to just like make sure that we were cage free and everything. You know, I don't think I've ever said this on the show before, but I was a vegetarian / vegan for a little while, for like 5 years. And I'm pretty much carnivore now. And the reason for that flip is due to a lot of research that I've done. Not that I'm a nutritionist, not that I am offering you nutritional advice or telling you how you should or shouldn't eat, but my personal opinions on things changed, and so did my health. I have severe autoimmune issues, which leads to really, really aggressive psoriasis, which affects my career, affects my life, and puts me in constant pain. I couldn't sleep at night. I had psoriasis so bad that I was constantly scratching and bleeding, and it was really, really traumatic, and I was constantly uncomfortable. Now I'm at a point where, like, I still have patches, but I don't really feel them. I don't itch too much here and there. And now if you guys follow Carnivore MD, Dr. Paul Saladino, he's got a lot of good information, and I'm just taking the plunge. You guys know now that these episodes are out about John and I's sobriety challenge. So we're actually going to be extending that an extra week just for shits and gigs. That's you. That was not me. That was your stomach.
No, I know.
We're going to be extending that extra week just for shits and gigs, just to challenge ourselves a little bit harder. And I'm challenging myself to 30 days, pretty much animal based.
Just a quick question: is Paul Saladino the nipples guy, or is that the other guy?
What?
The nipples guy?
The guy who's like it was like liver, fruit, and raw dairy, and he's like in a supermarket with the shirt off. He's like, "These are my nipples. What do you think?" And I'm just like, "Put a fucking shirt on."
What is
Yeah,
happening?
you hate that. You hate him. Yes, you do.
He's
You hate him.
just like.
But in
just
the,
does
but in
this.
the same way, if you actually listen to his YouTube videos instead of his clickbaity Instagram stuff, it's kind of like Huberman. Like he constantly referencing studies, constantly talking about different chemicals, that are present in certain things and what their effects could have, and he admits when things are not proven and when they're opinion based on his opinion as a cardiologist.
I feel like a lot of the time, though, every time, even and again, this is coming from the clickbaity stuff, though, is that every time he does bring up.
It's all linoleic acid.
Well, it's
all linoleic acid.
It's also
and that cholesterol's good for you.
it's all like the effects are like not like the I feel like the risk to reward ratio. He's like this will. He's like again, it's like whatever's in spinach. Like it's like that'll the oxalates in spinach. Like that'll lower your iron intake. And it's like okay, but like how is that balanced against the benefits of eating spinach? It's like where he's like, oh, this will affect this, and it's like every time I've seen something where he talks about an effect, it's like not that big, and that's different though than again he talks about someone like Michaela Peterson who like using it as the elimination part of it, which is like had severe autoimmune
Michaela
issues
Peterson
and
literally eats lamb and beef and salt, and that's it.
and
Same
water
with
and
Jordan
sparkling
Peterson.
water.
Yeah, same with Jordan Peterson. Like that's all they eat is that, So yeah, but that's all they eat. That's all they eat is meat. That's it.
Yeah.
And this is he does it as a lifestyle. All he has is raw cheese, kefir, raw milk, meat and fruit and honey and like salt, and that's it. At the same time, if you are 80 on, 20 off in the future, I think a 30-day kind of like reset of my immune system, because when you start looking into there's a book called is it The Path, or somebody lent me a book that I still have, because whenever you lend somebody a book, just let's be honest, you're not getting it back.
You may as well just throw the book into the ocean.
Yeah,
Pretty much half of the books in that cabinet are somebody else's.
and you haven't read them.
I don't know whose they are. I don't
John doesn't know
John
how to
doesn't
read.
know how to read. Ooh,
yeah. I like the
don't.
pictures,
There's
but I do.
But basically, so long story short is, because of my health, my mind changed about these things, because as soon as I reintroduced healthy sourced meats, like I use ButcherBox, I try to make sure that all the meat that I eat is antibiotic free, pasture raised, free roaming, grass fed, grass finished, like whatever I can do to make it as ethically sourced as possible, as nutritious as possible. And I'm really trying for the first time in my life, this sobriety challenge has taught me that I can do stuff for 30 days. I quit smoking.
Yeah.
I never thought I was going to quit fucking smoking cigarettes. That's been years since I've had a cigarette. You know what I mean? I could do anything. That means I can do it. If I can make it happen, I can do it.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know? So it's I'm in so much better control now. So I think 30 days on that. It's already been a week, and I feel really good. My body feels good. My joints are starting to lubricate a little bit. I'm going to get back to working out tomorrow. I'm going to try to, lift in the morning and take class at night and see how I do with my energy levels, just having fruit as my carbohydrate source. And I think it'll be a good way to kind of gauge, because there's other diets where it's super It's really stringent. It's like, okay, only boil your white fish. Just boil white fish.
That whole sentence is like awful.
I'm just mad about
boil
that.
white fish and have cucumbers for a week, and then like slowly reintroduce and see if maybe spinach is what's triggering you.
And if you
Because
piss blood, you're ketogenic. Like,
well, because there are certain because keto was a fuck show for me. I hated doing keto.
yeah, same, dude.
And like, sorry, keto people, I fucking hated it.
You may like it, but Ed doesn't. So
yeah, but at the same time, like even when I'm just having like rice and occasionally like even the sourdough bread that I was making, like I don't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Something's going on where my body's just not doing well with grains, and maybe it's because I have an overgrowth in my gut biome of like candida or something like that, and all those grains and everything are feeding it.
Mm-hmm.
So 30 days off of that, potentially it'll reset some things, reduce a little bit of the brain fog, maybe clear my skin up a little bit. We'll see. Only thing like I don't really agree with him when he's like fucking like never eat spinach again. Like I don't really see that, but
a lot of that is just like.
But I do. I mean, like I had onions on sausages today. Ooh, I cheated. I had fucking onions. But like, you know what I mean? Like I'm not gonna kill myself. It's like Dr. Sean Baker. Dr. Sean Baker's another one. He's strictly carnivore, only meat. And he's another good one where he's like, he was talking to Rogan on his interview with him. He's like, well, he's not like he goes, I don't split hairs if somebody puts cilantro on my steak when I order it at a restaurant. He's like, whatever,
Yeah.
Like,
don't do that. Don't send back something because there's cilantro on it.
Absolutely
or
not.
whatever,
No, I know.
whatever green, chive.
They're just gonna press the button to put you into like the restaurant Shark Tank.
But the point of all this is that I was buying the expensive eggs anyway. And so if you're not eating out and you're not eating terrible foods for you and you're not just like wasting money on restaurants when you could be meal prepping and doing things for yourself and doing things on your own, you're going to save money. You'll be able to buy the nice groceries for yourself and save money because you're not spending $30 for lunch every day. You're not going out and having drinks on the weekend. How much money did we used to waste at the bar when we were kids?
Oh man,
Hundreds of dollars in a night.
I could run a bar tab, boys and girls, but not
so
recently.
could I.
Yeah.
So could I. There's that one time I got double charged by the bar. I was out like $400. That was fun.
Oh shit, was that where we went?
That was where we went. Yeah.
Oh man.
But still, so now for pasture raised eggs, and now the key is pasture raised, because there's certain things. I don't know how this is in other countries, but there's a lot of loopholes when it comes to advertising that make it legal. So they could say cage free, and what that means is for an hour a day the chickens go outside.
Yeah, it's just asterisk. We lied. It's
Touch
just,
grass.
yeah.
They just get
Right.
punted back.
So if you really want something, you want like even free range. Free range is good, but this is why I love Vital Farms. Vital Farms is the brand I look for.
Yep, same.
Pasture raised. You want to look for pasture raised eggs, and so now, this is from CertifiedHumane.org. Do pasture raised eggs have better nutritional value? In it, researchers found that one pasture-raised egg contained twice as much omega-3 fat. Now, remember omega-3, because omega-3 versus omega-6 is a big, big, big difference. And that's the other reason why you shouldn't buy farm-raised fish, because farm-raised fish are fed with pellets. Those pellets contain omega-6 fatty acids, and omega-6 fatty acids are inflammatory, while omega-3 fats are anti-inflammatory.
They feed them non-pasture-raised eggs, so that's the main thing you need to remember.
That's the problem.
That's the
so
issue.
3 times more vitamin D, 4 times more vitamin E, and 7 times more beta-carotene, which is B12 vitamins.
Ed is a moron. Ed is a moron. Ed is a moron. Correction, beta-carotene is a form of vitamin A, not B12.
Then eggs from hens raised on traditional feed. From an agricultural standpoint, pasture-raised eggs are often superior to, and I believe that they mean in flavor. You want that like deep orange yolk.
Yeah. My mom has a friend who has chickens in her backyard, and I suppose they qualify for this criteria. I'm not sure about the grade.
Yeah. If they're outside eating bugs,
They're like her roommates. They're like, hey, what's up? That's Fred. And Fred doesn't lay eggs because he's a rooster, but the rest of them do. And but yeah, they have these deep orange yolk. They're delicious. I love a good egg. Over medium. Like I'm calling you back if we have over medium eggs. I love over medium eggs.
Yeah, me too. It's fantastic.
I'm a big
but like,
fan. Can we have breakfast again?
But then you should cook them side by side. Get an Eggland's Best white, bleached white yolk that thing was fed feed and kept in the dark its entire life.
It just looks like it came out of a package.
This pale yellow egg. So you have to realize that like especially if you're eating animal products, if the animal was raised like shit, the animal product is going to be like shit, like Wagyu beef. Yeah. Wagyu beef is super expensive, and it's really just marketing that makes it so expensive.
Yeah, I feel
it's
like
not good.
Like the Eggland ones, like when you look at the yolk, you're like, this chicken was just fed like Wonder White bread and like Diet Coke.
This
It's
chicken
like
was
it's
hung-
just like
there's a rooster on cornflakes, so they figured that was chicken food and just gave it just
yeah,
that.
it's like
you know,
well, it's on the box, and they're like, oh, I guess it is on the box.
these
Man.
chickens have been hung upside down their whole lives, just like for storage.
so and then so the fact from ChristyERD.com, the pasture raised difference by Christy RD says the facts that pasture raised that pasture raised eggs contain that sentence doesn't make sense.
the
fats.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. Okay, alrighty. I had a brain bug there for a second. Just
Full-on
the
hemorrhage.
facts that pasture-raised eggs, the fats, motherfucker.
You're trying
the
really hard.
The fats, ladies and
FATS.
gentlemen. Oh my god, I can't talk today.
Jesus.
It's late. It's usually early.
That means you can't. That means you get to add.
I can't read at night.
C's?
I can't read at night. Can't read at night.
It gets
I
late
lose
out there
my-
early,
What is
ladies
his
and gentlemen.
reasoning?
Smells like onions.
You just fed me them.
Yes.
The fats that pasture-raised eggs contain are anti-inflammatory and beneficial to the heart and brain, where conventionally raised proteins are higher in omega-6 and may promote inflammation. So it's interesting things to think about, and it's just my personal opinion on the fact that everybody's like, holy shit, like, and like everybody has to talk about it. Like, I'm ringing up eggs at the grocery store, my $7 eggs versus my $5 eggs.
Gonna
'Cause
break
that's
the
gonna
bank.
break the fucking right. That's gonna break the fucking bank.
Right.
And even the cashier is like, man, I can't believe how expensive these eggs are. And I'm like, why you gotta make me feel bad that I'm buying eggs?
How many times did you say that today, fella?
Yeah, seriously.
Am I
Well,
your
because
first customer?
That's what happens. Is like something makes a headline, and everybody's like, I can't believe that thing that's happening everywhere. Isn't that crazy?
Let's talk about
You know,
that
let's
thing.
talk about that thing that's happening all over the place. Isn't it terrible? We better not buy eggs. I saw an article that was like, what you can buy instead. And it's like, motherfucker, you're going to Burger King. Shut up.
You can buy instead of eggs.
Yeah, what you can buy instead.
What substitutes eggs?
Egg substitute.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Not okay with vegan food pretending to be not vegan food. Like it's vegan meat. Like no, it's
And
not meat.
Yeah,
It's-
and regardless
call
how
it something else.
And regardless how much you may not like the clickbaity Kayla's bullshit fucking post from Paul Saladino, you should follow Sean Baker because he got interesting information. It doesn't mean you have to be a carnivore.
Is that the bigger dude?
Yeah.
Okay.
The guy who's 57 years old will put his blood work out there that he's not taking testosterone and can deadlift 405 for
He'll
20.
forcefully put his blood in you. He's like, you want to see how good this works?
At a
Shut up.
distance.
Oh my
5
god.
seconds.
Like Spider-Man.
He just put up a video the other day. 405 for 20. Deadlifting 405 for 20 reps.
20?
For
Oh,
20
shit.
reps. At
What?
57 years old.
Wow.
All carnivore. So it's like
my max
there's
is
something
435.
something to be said about like the way our ancestors ate, and like there is some evidence that even the warrior monks ate meat.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know,
It was actually their enemies.
Ooh.
That's I'm lying. I don't. I'm really not that smart.
John's just making stuff up now.
I'm just playing along.
They just ate
everyone.
other people, I think, or maybe did they?
I'm just keeping these guys company at this point. Like, thanks for
But
being
yeah,
my
John's
friends.
just like a smaller armoire
but,
that
you know, but
talks.
it's just my personal opinion on perspective about these things, because the news is going to try to make you afraid. The news is going to try to make you really fearful about, like, I guess I better not buy the things that are healthy for me and buy things that are less healthy for me because it's going to save me $3. But also, I went to a barbecue place today and spent $35 on my lunch.
I don't know.
You know?
Eighth a pound of brisket.
Right? Yeah,
it
it's
needs
like
sauce because it's drier than
it's
a
like-
doorstop.
It's like Seung says all the time about the paying for the seminars and paying for workshops and stuff like that he does, or taking private lessons or whatnot. He's like, listen, if you're having trouble affording something that's going to benefit you in the long run, don't go to Starbucks that week. Don't buy the stupid shit you buy at 7-Eleven that week. Find a cheaper way. And the cheaper way is usually, and I've said this on episodes before, prepping yourself the night before. Making sure you have something in the fridge that you can either throw in the microwave before you leave for work or take with you and eat. If you're one of those people that thinks like microwaves are going to give you cancer, then I can't help you. But like,
Make sure you portion out your ice cream the night before. This way
Yeah.
it's ready for you the next morning.
yes, exactly.
So you can have your ice cream in bed and stay there.
I love I feel like
ice cream in bed is like that is like a clutch move. Ice cream in bed is.
I feel like
the
that
shit.
guy. I feel like that
Hedonistic.
guy who's like portioning out his ice cream is just like doing it for show. He's like, and for today's portion, and it's just one container. And he goes, not to be confused with tomorrow's portion, but just another container.
We're gonna have some chubby hubby.
Oh, that's my
today.
cheat. ice cream is my fucking shit. That's my shit. A cookie dough ice cream.
You could
for
not
the
pick a
win.
more calorically dense cheat meal. I love ice cream too, but it's
I
like,
love ice cream.
and that's 1,400 calories.
Yeah.
One
That's like
single
light.
lick.
That's like going like light speed to getting fat. It's just like it's just.
Dude, do you
I'm
know-
gonna go. What's the thing from Speedballs? Spaceballs.
What's this thing from
We're gonna go ludicrous speed. It's just
Yeah.
ludicrous speed to hypertension. It's just ice cream.
Suddenly you're 418 pounds. No, but dude, like Mac from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, he got
Yeah.
fat
Yeah.
by melting ice cream
And drinking it.
drinking it.
Yeah.
Like, and he went to his doctor, like, what's the healthiest way that I get really fat? And the doctor was like, well, first of all, don't.
Yeah, get the fuck out of my office.
Second of all, yes, that
Yeah.
that will get you very fat.
If
but
I was
first
that
of all,
doctor,
don't.
I would just like slowly just put a pie in his face, just like, just get the fuck out of here. Don't
Enough
ever
of
come
this.
back.
Don't eat that.
Yeah,
I need that back.
just taking it out of his mouth.
Yeah, no, that's a bad time.
Yeah.
So, John, you did have something that you wanted to bring up today. Did you want to jump into that topic?
Yeah, there was last week. I meant to bring this up sooner, but I
Oh,
was
this is
at work.
perfect.
Yeah, no, it was,
Doing great, boys.
Yeah, we're doing great. So, I mean, it's good that you bring up fear because fear was kind of the center of this thought that I had, or kind of a culmination of thoughts I had last week. So I was working, and there was a couple of guys that I had seen before. They looked familiar. I wasn't sure where I had seen them. I introduced myself, and they're like, "Oh, it's like Gordo. It's me, Christian. Like we met at the Christmas party. Like." I was like, oh yeah, I was hammered. That's right. That's why I don't remember you. But anyway,
Yeah, if you met me at the Christmas party, you didn't.
yeah, exactly.
You didn't.
And
You
the
met
temp-
someone else.
and
You
the
could have been
temp
a
was made.
Channeling spirits.
You could have been a potted plant in the corner that I was trying to make out with. I don't know.
I was like, he was like those people that are channelers. You know what I mean? Don't you love those people that they're like thousands of people buy tickets and they sit up there and the lights are low.
I don't know what you were doing at
The
first.
getting ready.
lights are low and they're like, ah yes, thank you. Hold on, I'm coming. Give me 1 minute. Let me summon him. And they go. Ah yes, I am here. I am now speaking to you from my ship above the planet, and people buy it. Can you believe that shit?
There's another profession that has existed for a very long time
Bashar.
called acting.
That's what I'm thinking.
Acting. that is acting. You're doing that.
Yeah.
It's been around for
Yeah.
hundreds, maybe thousands of years. Yeah.
Give that guy an acting degree and handcuffs. to put on
Performance.
himself.
That's
It's
what
called
that is.
acting.
Oh.
That's
That's what that's called.
John,
But
what
anyway,
were you saying?
we can get back to the story.
Holy shit.
So this guy was, I believe he was either a runner or a PA, so relatively low on the ladder when it comes to positions in television. And we were talking and this and that, and he mentioned that he had interest in EVS, which is what I do. And
No.
and so
No.
I told him like, yeah, well, tell me about it. And he was like, well, I went to the school, I took a course on EVS, and I just haven't had the opportunity to sit down at a machine and operate it. And I have one right in front of me. I'm literally on the air, like doing replays and talking to this kid. And I was like, give me your email address. He was like, yeah, sure. And so I email him the actual handbook for the EVS, like hundreds of pages, the complete operator's manual to maintain a server and the remote. And but before I emailed that, I asked him, did they give you the manual? I'm like, he's like, I have a sheet. And I'm like, no, the manual. So I just gave him all the information you could possibly know about the machine, and for free, like for nothing. I was like, here you go, man. And he's like, whoa, like seriously? I was like, yeah. Read it over. Make sure you can sit in front of a machine and look
Right,
at
have it in front of you while you're
look at
doing
what it says and hit the buttons and see what they do, because this is good, but it doesn't really do a lot unless you have a machine in front of you to learn it. And he was like, dude, like thank you, man. And you know what? There's a chance that maybe that's where it ends. Maybe he doesn't pursue EVS any further, but you know what? I gave him a tool that I had in my belt, and I felt no fear from it. I felt nothing of it. Because, in my own opinion, bringing other people up doesn't bring me down. I believe as an operator, my value is intrinsic to the way I operate a show.
Yeah, and
So
I dealt with
don't-
things like that when I was a mechanic a lot of the times. Like, people didn't want to teach you how to do stuff because then all of a sudden you'd be able to do what they do and you're going to take the big jobs from them.
Right, and that didn't enter my brain for even a second, to the point where even another PI had done the same to him as well. He was like, oh, you think I get that too? I'm like, yeah, man, absolutely. It's information. You get the information, you do what you can with it. It's not like my responsibility. The interaction with me is over at that point. And I told this story to my mother on the phone. And she told me, she was like, John, like that's because I've realized in you, like you recognize abundance, and there's plenty of abundance to go around. There's plenty for everybody.
Right.
And people that would have said no or not done that operate with fear. they're scared, and they're scared of what empowering another person to enter their realm, what would happen to them having another person to be their competition. I don't believe that at all. And she said it's fear that caused them to do that. And then she said to me, like, John, you know how many times, or do you know what the most repeated phrase in the Bible is? And I'm not really a religious person at all. Like, I don't remember the last time I was in church. I don't read the Bible. I read excerpts when
Your wedding.
When I mean, yeah,
Fair.
we went
That's
exactly. That was the last time I was in a church. It was my own wedding. But she said the most repeated phrase in the Bible is "Do not be afraid." It's repeated 365 times. It is the most repeated phrase in the Bible by a lot, and it's just
one for every day of the year.
Right.
Right.
And that's another coincidence, and that really made me think.
Are there coincidences, John?
I mean, you tell me.
I say there are none. I am speaking to you from my ship, which is floating now above the planet.
I fear what the fallout from that skit is gonna be like when they realize you're acting.
Wait a minute, can I do that?
Yeah, like I can
He just goes,
pretend.
hey! Guy just pulls out a pistol and shoots that guy in the audience.
That's
Like,
how I feel
Bashar made me do
That's
that.
how we both feel about Spirit Grandma.
Yeah, but yeah. So
Hold
you
that
know,
thought, because I don't know what you're saying. But finish.
Esther Brooks.
I still don't know what you're saying.
yeah,
One second.
I don't know. But yeah, I mean that was really the long and short of it. It kind of got wheels spinning on me though, because you know, if "do not be afraid" was such an important phrase as to be repeated in the Bible 365 times, I think there's value in that statement, to fear not, to be brave. I mean, what kind of value does bravery have in your life? Obviously a lot. Being brave is an extremely valuable thing, and I think being brave is more than just not being scared. Yeah,
Right.
and we've spoke about this before with on numerous occasions, but I think it's more than just the negative impacts of fear. I think that all negative things come from fear. I think that's a fair statement.
And a lot of times in the Bible, when they say "do not be afraid," "do not be afraid" is being spoken oftentimes in the Old Testament by angels, who are like that's what they said to Ezekiel. So Ezekiel's seeing like wild shit.
Yeah.
You know, he's seeing like, you know, rings of fire with eyes in them, and like
That's
all
what
this-
angels looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The angels are like, that's Hank. And he's like, I don't know what any of this is. He's like,
Yeah.
just relax, bro.
Yeah, but could you imagine there's like this giant hulking figure that's on fire in front of you, this big great presence, and the first thing he says to you is "do not be afraid," and it's like, really, you know, it's telling you, don't be afraid in the presence of greatness, don't be afraid in the presence of power, you know.
Yeah, I think it's more than just this tamping fear in front of an apparition. I think it's just how to walk into the night. You know, it's how to walk through the darkness. It's how to walk through life. It's just do not be afraid. You can't be afraid with every step you take on every minute of your journey. You know,
Right.
But
because
every move you make.
that too. I'll be watching you," said Sting from behind the bushes with his bass guitar,
Yeah.
naked.
Yeah. He's just playing with his dick. Boom, 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 boom.
Go wash you.
Sting
Go
allegedly,
wash me.
allegedly a passionate lovemaker.
Yeah, a tantric
He's just
love maker for
he's
hours
just
at a
running
time.
away from the neighborhood watch. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Just edging for 4.5 weeks. Just,
Oh, can't you see?
oh, tell ya.
You
Saw.
ain't catching me.
it's great. Can we wrap this
Yeah,
up?
let's tell you
It's like,
something.
you know, it's like, Sting, come on, man. It's great, but like it's been 4 hours, dude.
I gotta go to work.
Yeah, come on, man. But yeah, I think that's about where I wanted to take that.
I-
So
I also
Fear
think
not.
too it is people treating fear as, because again it is such a base emotion. It's like, oh, happiness or this, that, and the third is, but there's something very, fear goes so much deeper, where it's not just like, it's not like, I feel like almost like a later patch emotion. It's like this was like, it's like base CPU, like base version of the game, like fear and
yeah,
what
it taps into something primal.
yeah, and I think that is a big piece of it, that it does tap into something primal, but it's also just it's not just an emotion, but it's also a perspective, because fear is again, it's how you're interacting and how you're viewing the things around you, in either in a way of abundance. I have more than enough, so and also a lot of times I think abundance does attract abundance further a lot of the time. But in saying that, I think it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy of you feeling like you have less and trying to hoard, and then because of that, what can be making you feel like that's true is even just your perspective, and how then, because again, that's your operating system that you're viewing stuff. That's like the glasses you put on. If you had Great Depression like pit vipers, you were just like, oh,
Oh, I love
now
my
it's
pit
19.
vipers.
Yeah,
I love my pit vipers.
dude. Yeah. John becomes a bad guy when he puts his pit vipers on.
It's just troublemaker shades, dude. I'm
Yeah.
a big fan, but I didn't mean to interrupt.
John
you.
just
You were saying.
becomes an alcoholic just immediately.
just immediately double fisting, and then they're empty. And
John just all of a sudden John's just riding a pig.
Becomes Uncle Laser.
Yeah.
You ever watch Kill Tony? Uncle Laser. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Oh my god.
But yeah, John's just riding a pig.
Yeah,
John's just riding a boar.
But is all bigotry not rooted in fear?
It has to be.
You know?
It's the same thought. Is that unfair prejudice? It has to be rooted in fear. It's just the only way. How can you be so irrationally motivated as to feel hatred? It's not fun to hate anything.
Yeah, and then they rationalize their hatred with more fear-based things, like they're going to do this to our community.
Yeah.
They're going to do this to our industry.
Like
They're
insert
going to
group
this.
here.
And fear
you know?
is synonymized. That's not a fucking word at all. It's synonymous with not knowing. Also, the unknown. Again, it's because yeah, and that's why you see all these things of like again, what the fuck was that guy's name? We don't have to look it up, but you guys don't know is the black guy who went to a bunch of the KKK rallies. He's been on Joe Rogan, and he
Oh
was
my
like,
god!
I heard about that.
No,
Yeah, I
that
read
guy's
about
got
that
an
guy.
amazing story. He's got a collection. What is his name?
We need to find out.
But you know, there is something to be said about not only having fear as your base kind of model of living in your life, but also realizing, you know, being able to take a step back.
Daryl Davis.
Being able to take a step back.
How one man convinced 200 Ku Klux Klan members.
Hold on, Ed.
being able to take a step back and be able to take inventory of your own life and see where you're operating from fear. Because again, we talk about this a lot, where it's like, and I think we're very cognizant of this in where we are in our life of like, you know, late 20s, early 30s, where we're like, man, there's like shit like I gotta like work on, you know, because like if not, like it'll just be there it'll just be on your back forever, like just like,
shitty koala.
just licking your earlobe until you die.
I went to my friend Amanda's office today, and we were talking about that a lot. Like oh my god, like remember 13 years ago when I was 20, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like there's all this shit that like all these coping mechanisms that we used to use when we were in our early 20s that like were like totally okay then, that like now you're like, man, I can't go back there. I can't go back to that pit.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know?
And again, that thing is looking where you again, a lot of times the tools and answers for your own personal development and growth are in the places you least want to look. And again, that's going back to the whole Jordan Peterson idea. That's why you know, the gold you're looking for is being held and hoarded by the dragon, because you have to delve into the depths and overcome the dragon to get that thing. It's holding what you want most. You know, so it's not just that it could be gold, it could be anything. That's the whole I guess would it be the metaphor, the allegory of that is that it's
ethos.
Yeah, it's holding what you desire most, and it's that's why it matters that it's underground. You have to delve in deep to go get it, and that it's being held by this thing that the least thing that you want to look at, and there's something to be said for that, and that's even something for me. Kind of going back to the idea of discipline perspective again. That's why I felt that it was important even to as a tattoo to like get tattooed on myself, is that idea, because it's like as a reminder for me of, because if you don't look at it, you're not going to look at it. Like if you don't look at it like that is a completely one way street in that sense of addressing it, because if you don't address it, then it just acts on its own, and it just kind of is running in the background,
right?
And it's guiding, and it's giving you these subtle nudges of you just kind of again not being in control of like, you know what, fuck that person, that this person is something triggering that is from your past, fuck that person, it steers you this way and it steers you that way, and it's like if you're not willing to engage and interact with that, then you just become this person that is being pulled and like mushed by this shadow of yourself that is not properly integrated and not properly dealt with.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and if I may interject with just this one small passage from this
John,
article on Daryl Davis.
Right.
It says Daryl Davis is a blues musician, but he also has what some might call an interesting hobby. For the past 30 years, Davis, a black man, has spent time befriending members of the Ku Klux Klan. He says once the friendship blossoms, the Klansmen realize that their hate may be misguided. Since Davis started talking with these members, he says 200 Klansmen have given up their robes, and probably more now. When that happens, Davis collects the robes and keeps them in his home as a reminder of the dent he has made in racism by simply sitting down and having dinner with people. And so in speaking to them, he forces them to look at that filth. You know,
Yeah.
he forces them to look at that because they realize they're now confronted with their fear and realizing that their hatred is based on fear that is irrational.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's as you were describing earlier, Ryan. The words came into mind to describe fear as an irrational motivator. It's just the two words that kind of just assembled themselves in my brain listening to you speak. But one could even argue that that the dragon hoarding the gold underground, you could even say the first obstacle that you would face in pursuit of this dragon before you even start digging and even face the dragon itself is fear. It is the first obstacle that you need to overcome in order to progress anywhere in any direction that you want to go that may be positive. So it's a barrier. It can act as a barrier, and it just like it acts as a motivator. Just a motivator applies force and persuades you to go in a direction. A barrier is preventing you to going in one particular way.
And
I'm sorry.
you know what's actually interesting to that point too? I feel like what fear also is that it is both ignorance and arrogance towards the perceived outcome, because you're ignorant of what could actually happen, which is leading to fear, but you're also arrogant in the sense of knowing that it's going to go badly. That's also what it is, because you're like, oh, like this is gonna go bad, so I'm not gonna do it. It's like, well, but you don't know that.
You don't
though.
know that for certain.
And it's like, and it's you don't. But again, if you're not up to challenging that part of you, then again, then it just, I feel like it just ensnares you more and more and more, because you let it sink in, and then it gets to a point where you don't even realize that it's there anymore, and then it just kind of fully, it fully kind of integrates with you in the way, not in a. It becomes, I think a better way to think of it is that it becomes more of a parasite on your life. It becomes something that is, like a brain worm. It's becoming something that is controlling you from the behind the scenes, and you're not fully aware of it, but then you're on the receiving end of dealing with all the outcomes of it. You're dealing with all the consequences of that. So, again, it kind of goes back to the idea of that discipline perspective and looking where you least want to look for the things that you're looking for. So basically, maybe this could be, I don't know if we have a new merch idea, but talk to your inner Ku Klux Klan member inside of you, and
we're putting that
have
on a
dinner.
t-shirt
Have dinner with them,
And make him take his robe off.
undress the Ku Klux Klan
have dinner
member
with him,
in
and
your cerebellum, and
undress them.
it's just like, it's just a rant, just a psychotic rant on a t-shirt. The text is just getting smaller, and it's just dribbling off the side.
It's just got like Rose from Titanic, just a Ku Klux member, like
This picture of Ryan drunk on a park bench.
Hammered, fucking hammered.
But
just Boston drunk.
This is also reminding me of the time when I was a cashier at Waldbaum's. I was working the register. Yeah, and
picture you just ringing people up in a Ku Klux Klan outfit. Very specific reference, but
no, it was a green apron, a green smock. Actually, I upgraded to the apron when I went into the bakery. But I was talking to this woman, and I'm a social enough guy. You know, I like to have conversations with strangers, and I did a lot of that when I was a cashier. And there's this one woman, we just kind of got started on a conversation, and it just kind of went down into the religion avenue. We took a hard right, and her reasoning, it's like, well, why do you believe in God? And she's like, well, if you don't believe in God, you're gonna go to hell, and like, you don't want to go to hell, do you? Like, it's fire, you burn for forever. And it's just like,
good way to control people.
I had this realization. It was like, you're only doing this because you're scared of going to hell. I don't think that being good or following scripture, you're not motivated to do that for the goodness of it. It became apparent to me this woman was motivated by the mystery of the darkness, of the fire of hell, of its fear. It was fear that motivated her to make these decisions and to pledge her faith to whatever church it was. And I don't even know how the hell that shit works, but it was really eye opening in that, like, you can subscribe to this belief, the belief system. Solely because of fear. That seemed like her only motivator, just so singularly channeled. And that was my first real experience with that kind of mindset.
Right. Did I ever tell you about my time as a Royal Ranger?
Royal Ranger? That sounds cool.
It's like Boy Scouts plus Jesus.
Oh, boy. All right.
It was like, let's go camping, and during the day we're going to teach you how to...
If you want this patch, get on the cross. It's like, I don't like this.
We're going to teach you how to cut wood in the morning, and at night we're going to tell you why Harry Potter is Satanist, and if you like Harry Potter, you're going to hell.
Wow.
Like, you can't play with Pokemon because Pokemon means pocket monsters. And what are monsters but demons? And that is a direct fucking quote. That is a direct fucking quote. I'm not even making that shit up.
Oh, man.
I know you're not.
I'm not even making that shit up.
I mean, how about Harry Potter being the hero's journey, the story of undiscovered power?
No. We don't want to get into lifelong.
No, it's witches and wizards, even though they're like cute witches and wizards, but they're witches and wizards, so that means it's Satanist. Like, how about it's a fucking story?
Yeah, but like nothing's
and
more
relaxed.
Nothing's more more witchy than pagan shit, and they had no problem appropriating the Christmas tree.
They were
and
just
the
like-
Yule log, as we talked about in prior episodes.
Yeah, well, it's funny because the owner of the gym, I don't like boast about the podcast a lot at work, and the owner of the gym was like, "Oh, you have a podcast? Well, you should let me check it out, right?" So he checks it out, and he was telling me, he's like, "No, promote the podcast on your massage page," and I'm like, "No," and he's like. He goes, I get it. You don't want people to know who you really are, who you're doing business with. I'm like, no, my clients know who I am. The fucking internet doesn't need to know that, like, those two people are the same people, you know? And he's like, and he immediately listened to the one where he's like, yeah, you guys were talking about, like, butt fucking and the Romans. He's like, yeah. It's like, I don't know. He's like, you might be right about not putting those pages together. And I was like,
yeah,
told you.
I know.
This is not only an accountability project; it is a source of a great deal of embarrassment.
That's fair.
No, it's just
That's
we're,
valid.
we have
That's
a really
valid.
gross sense of comedy. Is really what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sort of a free speech purist in that, like, yeah, sometimes goofy, crazy shit can be funny.
Yeah, 100%. Me
yeah.
fucking too. Like, why is pizza made into a circle, cut into a square box, and cut into triangles?
Not really shocking, but definitely a hard-hitting question. I think that one really cuts deeper
It's
than
just funny that
the
you have
deep
this like
dish.
beautiful episode planned for us, and then at the end of it, you write that.
And it was like food for thought at the end.
Yeah.
After our announcements.
Literal
Quick
food for
quick
thought.
question for you guys. Ooh, yes.
But I love how you put what have been. I love how you put what have been the consequences of decisions made while fearful in our own lives. So would you like to go first with that?
That was so. I mean, that's there as a thought provoker. I didn't have a story in mind. I can come up with something. If something's on the tip of your tongue, I encourage one of you boys to go.
The one that's on the tip of my tongue is one I think I've spoken about before. But I used to be so afraid of, like, in relationships and stuff like that. I used to be so afraid of outcomes and where the future was going, and like people's progress, or people like leaving or not achieving their goals, or like fucking just like, not being on that hustle horse with me, that I would micromanage people.
The hustle
I would
horse.
I would micromanage people. I would like make people feel bad. I would make people I was with or friends I had feel bad for like not.
And at what period was this
putting
in your life?
I would say early 20s. You know what
Okay.
I mean? Just like, but like, I'm trying to help. I'm coming from a good place, but it's like also like relax and shut the fuck up. You know?
Yeah. Finding that balance is important.
Yeah.
Were you finished? I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah, no. I mean, like it's that's a loaded question.
It's a hard one.
That's something I would fear has been present in a lot of ways in my life, and like there was always like all the addictions that I had to overcome. There's always fear attached to letting go of that. How sick am I going to be if I don't have a cigarette today? I don't feel good. I better smoke
fear
something.
is like cancer.
It really
I
is.
don't.
Malignant.
I don't feel good. I can't sleep. I better have more THC in my system. You know what I mean? Like my brain fog is maybe that's caused by the weed, but like if I give up the weed, then maybe it won't be. And then like it's not. It's just ADD. It's just a symptom of what I have.
ADD and anxiety and overthinking.
But it's also me not, choosing not to use prescription medication, because that's also fear-based. That's also fear-based,
What were you going to say, John?
I was gonna say that related to it is the 22nd of January, and Ed and I are approaching the last couple of weeks of our sobriety challenge, and I had mentioned in a couple episodes that being sober for this long, which this is probably this is a candid statement, probably the longest that I've gone without a drink or completely sober in my adult life.
Me too.
That's
Me
fucking
too.
awesome.
Because
Absolutely.
Very proud of you guys.
I normally would have like at least a beer or two a week, I don't get hammered every week, but like I'll have a glass of wine after dinner, pretty like I'm not bashful about that,
Right.
But one thing that I think about the bad times in my life where I was drinking every night, because that is what my life was like before I started training with you guys. It was a lot of fear, and a lot of I wasn't able to properly process fear. Or negative emotions, and I would go to my hidey hole. I would get hammered.
Hidey hole.
I would get hammered in my dive bar, and that's how I dealt with my stress.
Yeah.
So I would run away.
We both got very hammered in that same dive bar.
Yeah.
And you kicked my ass at beer pong in that dive bar many times.
I would drink at this place so much that I would play beer pong every night, and I would not miss beer pong. My
He
skill
was an
level,
expert
John
beer
had a
pong
jersey,
player.
so
basically, it was my table. But and now that being sober for this long, there is no place to hide. There is no place to run away from that fear. And so the first week or so was really me developing a mental toolkit to handle negative emotions, because they don't just go away. And they're there on good days too. I needed to learn how to tamp my negative emotions and my fear of impermanence, as Ryan and I have talked about in the past, and Ed as well. And it kept me up a lot of nights. I had a very hard time for about a week and a half.
Yeah.
Where I just could not really get a grip, But things are better. The more you just kind of get through it, the more you just dive in and you handle it. Just emotionally. Yeah. I've learned to check myself. And just kind of like you're saying.
Checked himself before he rickety wrecked.
But that's something you're not really capable of doing. If the only place you go when shit gets hairy is to the bottle, it's a skill that you lose.
I would do the same thing with weed. I would smoke myself into a fucking stupor for like days and days and days on end to try to get over anxiety or fear, or like when last year when I found out about I don't mean to cut you off, but
it's
was
okay.
bad, but yeah, continue.
And that was really like that was the obstacle for me, and part of why this topic kind of jumped at me, because dealing with fear and negative emotion is something that I needed to relearn how to do, because I'm not escaping or running from them anymore. I'm trying to get a grip on it, and it's going to be ongoing. You're recognizing that life has struggles doesn't mean that we're working towards living a life without struggle. It's working towards living a life where your struggles become manageable. Which is if we develop our own toolkit, we empower ourselves enough and are self-aware enough to move past our own bullshit. It's not easy to do.
No.
And it's certainly almost impossible to do if the way you deal with it is getting high and drunk. You can't do it.
And if you're not, again, if you're not living kind of intentionally, avoidance, what you think of avoidance in the times that you are kind of cognizant of it, you think it's like, like you're walking in a parking lot and a car kind of, whizzes by and you're like, oh. But then you don't realize, though, that like the other 90% of your life is like that same car pulling around and you're like, just running away from it. It's just like, it's just going 5 miles an hour, like it's gonna run you over really slow.
It's just Christine, but like lazy Christine.
But
you know what I'm talking about? The Stephen King book, movie. Of the killer car. Christine, the killer car. No.
Dude, the amount of coke that existed in Stephen King's bloodstream.
If you wrote a horror movie about a car, the car was possessed by a ghost, and this kid rebuilds the car, and the car starts killing his girlfriend because it's jealous.
Then he fucked the car.
See, dealing with negative emotions, you can't do so while hammered and on drugs, but writing amazing books, apparently, you can do.
Sometimes
drugs have created some of the greatest art on earth.
Fair, that's valid.
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix discography, ladies and gentlemen.
I think there's something to be said.
And then he died at 27.
Just jumping back to the first thing you wrote, which is, how does fear impact judgment? And again, that goes back to the idea of being aware of when you're, taking inventory of yourself, of when you're in that state. I'm realizing that it's kind of, a lot of times for a lot of people, always there. It's always just kind of humming, just kind of like below the surface as something that you're, again, kind of like a filter over everything that you're looking through. And it's really just more of a spectrum of how much it's really affecting you and how much it's really ensnared your judgment. Perfect example, going to consequences of decisions that I've made while being fearful, as I think both of you, or at least you know this story, when I was in middle school, and it was the first time that I could try out for school sports. And what?
No, I'm listening. I'm anticipating.
And
I'm ready.
And I was playing soccer, and I was pretty good. I played forward, like I was pretty good. But I had this
You usually have to play forward. It's hard to play soccer backwards.
That's a good point. Just
stop.
That'd be horrifying, though.
I'm mad now. I'm fucking mad.
Me just like, oh my god,
Dude,
just like
80% of being a defenseman in hockey is skating backwards. You have to skate as fast backwards as you do forwards.
Oof.
Yeah.
And I was a defenseman when I was in 4th grade.
But I would So I had this irrational fear of like, well, if I fuck up a lot and then they're gonna yell at me, and then like if that happens at the beginning of the game, then I got the whole rest of the game to worry about that, and then what if it makes me fuck up more, and then what did that make me do? Fuck up a lot more. So what I thought would be a better idea, instead of taking it head on and just giving in and like letting go of that fear and just doing my best, I was like, better idea, I'm gonna lie and say I play defense and try out for defense.
Oh.
And then I made the team in a position that I didn't know how to play.
Holy shit.
So I had a whole season realizing that helping the other team score goals was a lot worse than me not scoring goals for my team.
You goofy son of a bitch.
Yeah, dude. And I told my parents that like later, like a few years ago, and they were like, we thought it was a little weird where like we'd come to the game and they're like, why is Ryan playing defense all the time? Because like they knew that I was a forward, that I
You're
played
a striker,
offense.
dude.
Yeah. So I literally just lied. I was like, oh, I know what I'll do. But like you think about how irrational fight or flight that kind of is, where you're just like, I'll just play defense, and it's like, what? How is that?
You got to
how many
play
of these
along with the
episodes
line.
I'm like listening to one of you, and then I realize that I'm over here like Danny DeVito, like
Oh, hey.
Just watching.
You're just like in a barrel, but then that caused more harm to me, because then it led to avoidance, which led to other new consequences that I didn't think about in the time period of me letting the fear control my initial decision. So again, if you're not aware of that even meta process, you're just like falling into like holes. Like you're just falling in holes, just constantly just breaking your ankles, and again, and I know we talk about this a lot too, of just like, sometimes, with us getting older, and we have a different perspective on both our parents and also just older people or adults in general, where you're like, oh.
Or laying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, realizing that mortality is slowly creeping in.
Oh man, well that's the impermanence that we're always talking about. That's
also true.
Yeah,
but just that idea of like, you start seeing like your parents and other adults as just like people who don't fucking know what's going on either, and you're like, you're just starting around going, wait a minute, you don't know what's going on?
My mother and I had a sort of relationship for a long time, and it was the whole like, I didn't even know who my dad was until I was 12 or 13. Didn't even know his name. I would ask her, "Who's your father?" She'd be like, "God's your father, honey. Don't worry about it." You know what I mean? Like, I'm Christ. Like
I've returned.
But, like, didn't even fucking tell me about it. Then finally told me about it. That's a whole other story. Finally told me about it. Difficult relationship. Then she meets Mark, meets my stepdad. We fight about that. Of course, new guy. I don't like him. Like, I'm fucking rebelling against everything.
Hi, I'm Mark. Fuck you.
Yeah. Basically.
16-year-old dad. Go fuck yourself.
Poor guy. I didn't even give him a fucking chance for the longest time. And that's just me rebelling. It was just me he's a great guy. It was just me being an ass,
Yeah.
or a kid, and like, then weird relationship through my 20s. Like, and it wasn't until I was like 24 or 25 it really like got close again. And then I had this realization when I was like 27, and I was like, holy shit, if I was my mother, I'd have a 6-year-old right now. And I thought about like how fucked up I was the past like 7 years, and I'm like, oh my god.
And also like you now hypothetically parenting.
Right.
Like putting her parenting into perspective to a certain degree.
100%.
She was very young when you were born.
She was 20 when she got pregnant. She was 21 when I was born. She was like a few months into 21 when I was born.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like, she was a fucking baby. My mother was a child with a child.
Yep.
And again, like I was talking about this again with my friend today, because she was 16 when she had her kid. We'll bleep her name. I know we're live. We're not going to save that. But like she was a kid too. So we relate to that all the time. That like, it's difficult. You're growing up still, but you're also parenting.
Yeah.
And so from the child's perspective, a lot of time they don't realize that until they're the same age.
Yeah.
Like I would have a 12-year-old right now. Like I could be Shane's dad if I had him when my mom had me.
Right.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So think about that.
And
that's
it's a chaotic situation.
Wild.
And I think there's something to be said to a certain degree, because again, and I'm speaking I think from a point of privilege, but from a not being in that scenario of having very loving parents, but I would say outside.
My mother wasn't not loving; she was just young and didn't know what the fuck she was doing.
No. I'm not saying it in contrast to your mom. I'm talking in general to other people listening. That outside of like real physical, mental, and emotional like abuse, I think there is a healthier perspective that I think we're alluding to of looking back at your parents' parenting. And not because I think outside of actual abuse and physical and emotional harm, I think there is something to be said in judgment of, not in judgment, but it's just like kind of a little bit of pushback that can be given for people that are like, who kind of like complain about how their parents parented them, and they're just like, oh, my mom did this and they did that. And it's like for me, like thinking about like me having a kid right now, be like, man, like that's a fucking huge responsibility, and like I don't even fucking know how to take care of myself fully yet. And it's like you gotta like having that in perspective of like they are like they're fucking, and again, putting aside abusive deadbeat pieces of shit, like they're trying their best. Like it's I can't imagine taking care of a person. Every
little shit that you say. Every little shit that you say is being heard. And I can't tell you, like, I'm not going to talk about it on air, but there was, like, one moment where I must have been like 7 or 8 years old, and my mother was just stressed out, and I was pissing her off, and I was like doing some little kid. She was like, "I'm gonna run away." She was like, "Good," you know. But it's like I held that as like trauma in my head forever,
Right.
Because you don't realize that like as an adult sometimes you just like. Because I have that, she gave me that tendency genetically to just be like, "Fuck you," you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and like that little like fire moment.
Yeah.
She didn't mean anything. She was just pissed. I was
Right.
being a little asshole.
And you think about that now,
Yeah.
where it's like, but again, it's you're able to combat and kind of like unweave that trauma, and be like, oh, okay, like that's not. It wasn't this like, oh my god, like you know, because you put it, you know, it's easy to put in that story of like, well, they said this and that leading to abandonment issues, this, that, and the third. Not saying for you specifically, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, like,
you know
and there
what-
is
you know
a
what
lot
I mean.
of child psychology that we're not educated in that, like, I understand it's really important.
Of course.
And there's a lot to it, you know, and well, they didn't know a lot then either, but at the same time, like, when you're talking about a 20-year-old doing their best.
Yeah, it's
You
like
know what I
it's
mean?
like it's like, hey, if you're 20, how would you raise a kid right now? It's like you know, it's like yeah, it's crazy.
I find that in the age bracket that we're in and entering, being that you're the youngest of the three of us, the human nature and the human element of our own parents is really, for me personally, like 100% is coming into the forefront. You know, because like as a child growing up, your parents are your parents. You know, they're
Yeah.
you have this
They're
idea
like
that
gods.
they know.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you have this idea that they know the architecture
They're in like a separate category.
of the universe. You're right. It's
Yeah.
like, well, they have a plan. Let's look to the adults. And now I'm an adult and I'm figuring this whole thing out. And
Yeah.
my mother and my father are much more candid with me.
I
and
barely have a plan.
there's,
Yeah.
Barely.
there's this something my mom has said to me a few times, which really like I was almost like really upset to hear it, and it was a compliment, but basically I would tell her about the podcast and all the cool things that's happening with my life, and I tend to be very tech savvy and I know a lot of stuff, and she said to me like, John, like, I'm amazed, like, you know so much when I taught you nothing. And I said, Mom, I like, that's not true at all. Like, it hurts me. It hurts me
Yeah.
for you to say that,
Yeah.
because you've taught me more than you know.
She taught you the tools in order to educate yourself.
I mean, it was more than just instructions. Teaching is not always giving instructions. On it's leading by example.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
being raised by my mother taught me more than the instructions that she knowingly laid out.
Teaching is sometimes involuntary.
Right.
Sometimes
It's
involuntary.
and like, you know, I'm certain that I get my industriousness from her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certain that I'm able to whip something up. You know, the way that I do, the way that she does. My mom's she's a seamstress, and she just always has arts and crafts going on,
Yeah.
and she's very artistic.
Right, and I get my work ethic from my mother because my mother, you know, in her late 40s and 50s, was doing 2 different sales jobs, Tupperware and Party Light, while working full-time while working full-time for New York State for a university as a higher-up administrator, while also getting her master's degree, all at the same time.
Yeah.
All at the same time. So you think about like the level of like, you see me like, oh, I haven't slept in a week because I've been working on shit. Like I get that from her.
That seems hereditary.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
It's amazing the kind of examples that can be passed on. You
Yeah.
know, and
Right, exactly.
So I really wanted to let her know that thought that she taught me nothing is just, there is no more invalid thought. You know, there's so much value that she's given me. So shout out to Mama. I love you.
Mine too. Love you too.
I love
Fuck
you
you,
too,
Mom.
Ryan. Oh,
Donna, don't listen to him. Don't listen to him, Donna.
Donna,
He's just
please.
kidding.
Well, I love you
No.
too, Donna.
And
So.
Angela's behind her going, yeah. Fucking back off, bro. Dad's setting
no,
pizza
I love-
boxes on fire.
Yeah, oh my God.
Oh
No, I
man,
love
that happened.
Mom and Dad. Love you very much. Yeah, no, I've learned invaluable stuff from my parents, and again, especially those having those lessons be, you know, me having, you know, my. And I definitely think my creativity, and also, again, some of this being hereditary, creativity, humor, I think also kindness and sociability, and also just, but then also having those things be put into perspective later through the lens of time and through the lens of maturity, and also too getting different lessons that you can't get when you're younger, getting them when you're older. Like again, like those things, like again, like the thing with the dog with my dad, like seeing that and hearing stories about it, and then just seeing that happen, and then also having to take part in it and kind of have that that like shit or get off the pot moment with him, you know. But to see him just be like, okay, this is what we're doing now, and just like, oh, okay, and to kind of, you know, it's very very, again, very proud to have you know, the parents that I have. But in saying that, though, I think this could be a good place to kind of move it into fear, both you know, coming into the school and coming into martial arts with your preconceived notions and fear and biases and all this stuff, and then how the martial arts can challenge that. Because again, I mean, I remember, and I think we could, you know, this probably could be a good place for all of us to start, is like my first day coming into class when you know, I love too, because I was like 17. I was like, you know, I'm at home and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go to this place. You know, of course my mom's like, where is this? What is this? Show me on Google where this is. And then I was like, oh, she's like, it's in an industrial park. You're not going. And I was like, come on. She's like, nope, you're not going. And I was just like, like, you know, just immediate, like, just like teen rage, just like drywall.
Oh, dude.
You know, no actual drywall was punched, but anywho, but I remember when I finally got to go. It was a Friday. It was a tactical combat class. It was a Friday night.
Oh, I love fight night.
And again, you hear all like the ruckus going on. You know, people. And again, you don't think anything of it now because it's just like that's just like normal life school ambience. You know, it's like brown noise of just like violence.
Hearing this.
Violence, brown, violent brown noise. That's pink noise is what you're talking about. But anywho, but you know, I remember I was talking to Cgang at the front desk, you know, and I was just kind of hoping that it would just be a preliminary meeting, and then I would go home, and he's like, you want to get in there? And I was just like, and then I just slowly just like brown holed into my asshole. It's like, just like it's like when you catch a Pokeball animation, just it was like, you know, and then
Shits oneself.
yeah. And then I remember going in there and I was horrified. I was just like, but you know what's funny is it was that similar anxiety from soccer. Now that I'm thinking about it, of like, oh, I'm going to work with someone, I'm going to mess up, and they're going to get upset with me that I'm going to mess up, and then it's just going to happen right at the beginning of class, and then I'm going to be thinking about that, and it's going to perpetuate the fuck up. And then I got in there, and then it was just, it was scary, you know, and of course you feel awkward, and you feel incapable, and you feel uncoordinated, and you feel weak as well. But, you know, that was, I was horrified, and I just kind of got in there, you know? So, what about you for like your first class?
Well, I mean, for this school, for Authentic Shaolin.
Yes, yeah, for.
Well, I was enamored to be there. There was no fear whatsoever. Because I had, you know, I've told you guys already. I had a background in jiu-jitsu.
You've had experience
it wasn't
before.
a total martial arts as an overall concept was not a mystery to me. So
Coming from a bit of a different place.
I mean, I felt I was from a completely different
Right.
place. I felt a connection. I felt like I had
okay.
been missing this for all these years.
Right.
I had been missing this very important thing, and I was very overwhelmed. I was really overwhelmed my first night at the school, just because like I realized I found this thing that I needed so badly.
Very cool.
And it's like, you know, it's 100% what was going through my head. I was just overwhelmed and so happy to be there, and that's 100%.
Yeah.
That's where I was at mentally.
What about you? First day.
Oh, first day. It was I was excited. I think the fear was more about what friends were going to say, because everybody was like, "You're gonna go to a kung fu class? What the fuck is this?" You know?
Yeah. It's a very guy friend thing to say.
Yeah. Well, not even that. It was just the people I hung out with at the time. You know, a lot of the guys that I was later in bands with and stuff like that. And it just became this thing that like nobody understood for many years.
Yeah.
It was like nobody took it seriously until I was a black belt. Nobody took it seriously until I got my black sash.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But you know, I was more afraid once I cared. You know, once I like really got into it, because you know, the first day I was like, all right, you know what, fuck it, I'm doing this.
Yeah,
you know, I was like all about it. Lao Shoshe was an orange sash, and he taught my first basic class, and he was going through blocks and punches with us, and I was like, this is the shit, because I also trained in Nakata when I was a kid, John's old school, and I had a great experience there, but my mother, being a single mom, just couldn't afford it.
It's very expensive.
Yeah, she just couldn't afford it after a while, and so she pulled me out. And so like I had all these kids that like John, who, you know, were there when I was little,
right,
and then were still there in high school, and I just always kind of felt left behind. Right. And then I could finally do it for myself. You know, cause I was still living at home and stuff like that. I could finally do it for myself and pay tuition and do what I had to do, and you know. It was more the fear of letting Cgang down, I didn't want to let him down. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to let anybody down. I wanted to just like represent well.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived kind of a double life for a while, where I was like partying, getting
Right,
fucked up
right.
on the
I
outside.
remember I was talking about that with you.
And then coming to class and you know,
feeling that like dissonance.
that dissonance until I, you know, like really started to. And then, you know, I went like this for a number of years until I
All
was
over the
like,
spectrum.
until I was like, all right, I'm gonna be a Black Sash, and that's it.
Yeah.
I'm committing, and I'm gonna be this person.
And you feel it once you like start that stride. It's a different it's a different pace, different journey.
The biggest fear is when you first start fighting, I would say, and that's really what starts to help you overcome fear, because you need to manage emotion in order to fight well. And you know, it took me a long time, because
even oh, I'm sorry. Were you...
No, I'm just saying, because I would just like fear led me to cower. And then that got me hurt. That led me to my eye injury.
Right.
And then fear led me to try to kill.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And then that also got me hurt.
Yeah. It's like the fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate.
Hate leads to the dark side.
Yeah.
And you had just mentioned, you know, the fear within fighting, like prior to training at Nakado. Like, even if, you know, we want to go back to my other first day on the mat, not to tell my story one more time, but it's, you know, my actual first time stepping into the school, I had already been brawling, like for a while. I was bullied a lot when I moved to Kings Park, and it got to the point where it was never a one-on-one. It was always like, you know, getting jumped by a bunch of kids, and then there was the next week it was them and their older brother, and like, you know, and then it was their older brother's friends. It was just the older brothers.
Who the fuck was bullying you? Like a guy who was like 7'6"? Who
No,
was bullying?
I was in fifth grade. I was in fifth grade fighting seventh graders.
I can see
So it was I didn't enjoy it, and you know, I just, it was so traumatizing. You know, like I never felt like any good was happening whatsoever, because there wasn't any. But like I had left an impression on people I spoke to later that, like, you know, the reason why we would invite everybody because we couldn't beat you up by ourselves. You know, so that's kind of a backhanded weird compliment, but I had encountered all that fear already. I was really well acquainted
Very
with
distilled version of
like the sensation of being punched in the face and getting that flash of white and tears in your eyes and you know, like that was something that happened to me all the time. So I wasn't afraid of that. So I did view training as a toolkit to help prevent that, you know.
Right.
And so, you know, like I said, these are like, it was between the grade of like, you know, 5th, 7th, 8th grade. So it's not like I was an adult on the street, you know, these are kids, you know. So, and I was a kid back then. But since then, never a single brawl in my adult life.
And so that's interesting, you coming from that perspective of having that, dealing with that fear in a very probably like raw and probably more irrational way, and then having that kind of honed into like something that's more discernible to you, like emotionally, or something that's actually like you're dealing with in front of you, as opposed to just like, again, kind of like the, God damn it, my brain just goes, bring up the little alien again from Men in Black, and it's just every episode I'm like, you guys remember the little alien from Men in Black? And then the guy's head was like
the round tummy aliens that are just like dancing and shit. Yeah.
waka waka. I'm a racist. They're just drinking Taster's Choice.
Waka said, you know, they got the fucking like the hand truck of Marlboros.
They're just like drinking Taster's Choice, smoking cigarettes, and being racist.
They're
other aliens and like other people on Earth.
Everyone I used to work with when I was a mechanic.
Yeah, they're just little mechanics, I think is what they are. But again, I think there's so many elements of what we do, especially with where we're at now of working up to Black Sash, which requires, again, testing, fighting, even like being on the demo team, performing, having to wrangle wrangle and like entice the attention of like of children to have. That's a weird way to say that, but you know what I mean. Not in a weird way, because that sounds strange.
On the street,
there's no candy involved.
Yeah, you're not holding like a net, like you're like the guy from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Gumdrops, lollipops, it's all free. Anyway, it's the child catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. If no one's seen that film. Anyway,
Dick Van Dyke, or was it Dick Van Cherry? The other Dick Van.
I think Dick Van Cherry's a porn star, probably.
I have no idea. It sounds
it's
like
Dick Van Cherry.
Yeah, it's just like, that's an era
that guy is like perpetually prolapsed. Sorry,
that's
sorry.
a real person. I gotta
Dick
make
Van
sure.
Cherry? There's no way that's a real person.
Yeah, that's 100% a real person.
That's Dick Van Dyke. That's Dick. That right there is Dick.
That's Dick Van Dyke.
Who is? what is Dick Van Cherry?
That's not a real person, then.
You're slowly killing me.
That's
Okay,
not a real
hold on.
person, then.
We're just
me.
peeling back like the illusions in John's head.
Yeah, no, that's one
Yeah,
pimple just
something
popped in my
something you
brain.
made up.
Yeah, that was a
Apparently,
fake thing that you
That
made
was
up.
some shit that I
Yeah,
made up
that's
as a
not a real
child.
thing.
Yeah, I don't know what Cherry Parts is. What is this?
A song by Chad. We're not going to get into
We're
this. This is-
moving
yeah,
away
by,
from
by
that.
Chad Smith and Leslie Bixler. Anyway,
X that window out.
of my brain.
Just gone forever.
I got to shoot the window.
just witnessed.
But again, there's like going to like me on Fridays and you especially Mondays and Wednesdays, and also teaching the adults, but especially teaching the kids is fucking intimidating. It's scary. So it's like
it's not easy.
I remember being scared, like, just to do basics in front of children.
Dude, yep,
And I'm like,
I-
oh my god, I'm in my 20s and I'm afraid to do basics in front of children.
well, kids are scary. Kids are again. You've ever been a full.
They give you no quarter.
You've ever been a full.
Dude,
a
they
full,
give you no quarter.
A
If you fuck
full-grown
one thing
adult
up.
and just like parked at a red light behind a school bus at the end of the day, and you're just like the kids are just like. You're just like,
dude, like one of the last kids, I won't say who, but one of the kids, I went over and I was like, hey, you guys have any questions? And this one kid was like, I never have any questions. Like,
fuck you, John. Just like, what?
all right, dude. Like, cool.
Just like,
have fun being 12 or whatever.
I think I know exactly who that kid was.
but there is again, and we speak about this a lot, where any endeavor that requires self-discovery and growth will have you facing elements of yourself and also facing fears. But again, martial arts, and especially speaking from experience of our school, is such a distilled version of that, where it's like, again, it's like even people who haven't had like hands on them before, or like someone manipulating them like that, it's like, oh my god, like it's scary, like having like Sifu do self-defense on you. You're like, holy shit, like it's like, but they're not hurting you, but you're not used to that. You're not, well, okay, yeah, that's you're we're legally not allowed to say whether they do or not.
You doing that mantis elbow on me, whatever the hell that was a lot of pain, and then just like a pressure
my
strike
God.
to the hip. Ooh.
Yeah, Sifu Nick had we were doing a technique where it was palm fan and then mantis elbow to the
an
hyperextend.
armbar?
No, and then just follow like snake follows the branch and just pressure strike you like right above the hip, and you just go.
that is
Your body just goes.
that is pain. Like your body goes
Yeah.
into what the fuck mode. It's
Yeah.
just
Like my left ass cheek was
He was
bruised
demonstrating
from-
the other day, and like I had to pretend like he didn't hit me for real. Like, and he just like hit was like one of those things that like hits you here and goes through your whole
and
system.
then you shit yourself.
Yeah.
you just feel wet.
That's one of those. I hope you're wearing a diaper punches.
This punch comes with a disclaimer.
yeah.
Yeah.
This punch smells just like. Just.
It's the Jackson Pollock punch.
Someone's just handing out like new packs of Hanes underwear on the way out. You know.
I think I left a headband in the bathroom on Friday.
Ooh, that's in the garbage.
That
man.
that just becomes underwear. Like smell wise, that just becomes used underwear
Yeah,
at that
just
point.
a wet headband. It was my Paisley one too. I liked that one. Oh well.
Well,
Whatever.
but even in thinking of, again, like with martial arts in our school, it's like there's so many aspects of it. Of if you want to progress, you are going to face times where you're afraid, and to progress, you literally just have to go through it. Again, it's the kind of that idea of like the obstacle becoming the way. The only way is through. It is like the thing you don't want, and it goes back to the thing. The things you don't want to go through, the things you don't want to look at, are holding the things that you want. You don't realize it at the time because your perspective is going off of fear. Again, same thing that of me thinking I was doing an elaborate ruse by trying out for the wrong position, then having to play the wrong position for 4 months, is the same thing of like you not wanting to get hit, so then you turn away from getting punched, and then you either can get punched in the back of the head and seriously injured, or you're not able to actually defend and brace properly, so you get hurt more by turning away. That's one thing I say is don't ever turn, don't turn your head away, because then you can't actually see what's coming, and it could lead, and that's a very specific thing of you operating out of fear, which can lead to worse consequences. That again is just one of those things that if you're in tune and you're with martial arts and martial training and kind of the mindset and philosophy of it, that you're moving beyond that hobbyist mindset where it's like, yeah, this is like important shit to realize. It's not just like, oh, that hurt. It's like, okay, but why did it hurt? Because I was afraid and I turned away, and it led to more pain than there needed to be.
And there's lessons in that to learn that you can apply to other factors of your life that aren't fighting or martial arts.
Yeah.
But is there anything on these points that you boys want to bring up?
I think
I think we've covered all the bases.
Yeah, I feel pretty good.
and I think the thing that I'm really taking from this episode is slay that fucking dragon. You
Yep,
know what I mean?
absolutely.
Slay that fucking dragon, look it in its eyes, and drive a sword right into it. You know?
Yep.
John?
Wow, I think that summed it up perfectly, Ed. So thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you to all of our Instagram followers, our Discord members, our Patreons, everyone. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And this has been the Martial Mind Podcast.